Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are here today to talk about a little game at the weekend at the Old Trafford, where little old Fulham went to Old Trafford, and actually something I've always wanted to do. If you don't want to know the result, please look away now, well, actually, they're not going to be looking at it, but put it on mute for a second, or probably don't even listen to the podcast, but that's probably the worst thing to say, so maybe we just ignore that completely. But yeah, Fulham went to Old Trafford. We beat Manchester United on penalties in the FA Cup's fifth round into the quarterfinals, and it's justice. It's justice for everything that happened 2 years ago, where I think in the group chat I was sort of talking about PTSD and it still strikes me. Even watching the game, I was still getting PTSD. But anyway, to dissect the game, to bring out all the enjoyment that we had in that game, I have two guests with me today. Or two panellists, I should say. Dave at Crave is back on That So Craven. Hello, Dave.
Hello, mate. How's it going? It's been a few weeks since we've seen you, Skivvy. And I know you've been away getting your tattoo done. And after last night's game, I'm wondering why you did that before Fulham won the FA Cup, because you could have incorporated that into your design. It just feels like a big faux pas, really. But other than that, I'm doing really well, of course. My mood is governed by how Fulham do every weekend. So that last night was extra special. It was obviously quite a long, emotional evening, but I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed the end of it. And I'm really looking forward today to just kind of unpicking it.
Absolutely. And it's funny you talk about the tattoo. I have another arm, Dave. I mean, I can have a complete Fulham FA Cup winners 2025 tattoo. And you know what's even funnier? And you are more than welcome to join us on this, Dave. But funny enough, Mr. Samuel Berense was talking to me this morning, and he was saying about maybe it's time. If Fulham managed to do the unthinkable, then it's probably time to do a matching That's So Craven tattoo, which he is very, very on board with. So there you go. We will more details if you opt in, and that goes for the listeners as well. If you want to get involved, we will send you the final design should anything happen. But we're not counting our chickens just yet. But we have another guest, another panelist. It's becoming very, very frequent. I think you're here more than I am nowadays, then, Mark. But Mark, how are we doing? You good?
I'm good. I'm excited to hear about the tattoo. Maybe we can go for a Guinness Book of World Records, the most simultaneous Premier League tattoos done at once, and that could be fun. But anyway, yeah, happy to chat more about Fulham, about our big victory. We don't like to do things easily, do we? We don't believe in 2-0 or 3-0. It needs to be always right down to the wire, and then we see which way, whether we get our heart broken or whether we have complete and utter elation. So let's go through it in granular detail.
Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned the Guinness Book of Records. I reckon we could potentially, if we just really niche it up, we could definitely make a submission, right? Like the most matching tattoos for Fulham's FA Cup victory in 2025. Surely that's going to be the niche there. I mean, that would probably be a world record with just the three of us. But there you go. Easy win, easy win. But before we go any further, common house rules. We have a Discord. The Discord is all things Fulham. You've got Fulham Transfer in there. You've got Cottage Tactico, who's now promoting his videos. And his videos were insane, by the way. So I'm hoping to see a lot more of that. So be sure to join the Discord, where obviously that will be posted in there. You can get the link to Cottage Tactico's dissection of the game. We're just the fan side. He really goes through the nuts and bolts of everything. He gets into Silver's mind, which I absolutely love, and I think there's a lot of us who would love to be into Silver's mind just for a day, just to see how he does. But this is the closest thing you can get. So be sure to join the Discord. Transfer news, everything you want. And it's just nice after a win to go into the Discord and going, wasn't that a great victory? And then it's suddenly ping, 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 ping of all these people that are just buzzing, and I get high off their buzz. So, don't do drugs and get high off the Discord, I think is probably where I'm going with that. I don't know. Yeah, let's go with that. But anyway, Old Trafford. That's where the team was basically not even 24 hours ago. And, there was a lot of questions going into the game, especially after we rested a lot of players in our recent victory against Wolves. There was obviously the Muniz question. There was always going to be, does Sessegnon come in on the wing? Because, obviously a goal scoring feat for him on that left hand side, which was amazing to see against Wolves. But I mean, Dave, coming to you first, were you surprised by the lineup that Raul wasn't involved and Muniz was given the nod ahead of him?
I was pleasantly surprised because before the game, I thought he would stick with Raul, but I felt that Muniz had earned his chance. Not just previous appearances in the FA Cup already this season, but just recently, he seems to be the player that's in form and scoring more goals from open play. That's not a slight on Raul, who's he's still general play, still excellent, but just felt that Muniz had deserved his chance. And it is February, so we know this is when he comes alive, so we should maximize that, and Marco did. So really pleased with that. And we expected Andreas to play with Smith Rowe picking up a knock previous week. So all in all, I wasn't overly shocked, but I was pleasantly surprised, I'd say.
Yeah. No, I think we echo that a lot. I guess coming to you, Mark, were you from a similar feat? Were you disappointed to not see Raul start, or were you pleasantly surprised like Dave?
No, just to echo what Dave has already said. Yeah, I think Muniz has done more than enough to earn his chance. I also think it kind of works well in the long term as a strategic move. And what I mean by that is, if we're getting into extra times, we bring in the fresh legs of Raul, and then we have Raul on pens. So it kind of fits very nicely from that perspective as well. I don't know how Muniz is on pens. I'm sure he's more than capable, but Raul was probably one of the few players in a Fulham shirt I see him step up, and I'm feeling pretty good. So overall, pretty happy with the lineup.
Yeah, I think you're quite right. And do you know what? I'd love to see Muniz take a penalty. I just don't know what he would look like, because he does seem a very calm finisher, but he does also seem very erratic. So it's almost like I can't picture what that penalty would look like.
I think, Skippy, what he'd do is he'd flick it up and then bicycle kick it in.
That's it. He would need the assist, wouldn't he? Like almost like Robert Pires and Henry. You would need Andreas to be there to take it, but instead of hitting it towards goal, he'd flick it up, and out of nowhere, Muniz would just come steaming into the box and over he'd kick it, I think. That would be really interesting to see. But hey, I think that's a good point though, Mark. I think in a game like this with Raul with fresh legs and to be able to sort of step up for the penalties as our main penalty taker as well, I think that's very important. I think Man United's side did surprise me a little bit, if I'm honest. I think the defence we kind of expected, given injuries to Martinez, so Maguire, Yoro and De Ligt. I thought it was quite interesting in the middle, obviously with Ugarte and Eriksen. Ugarte being someone who's come from PSG, not really found his feet just yet. Bits and bobs everywhere. Like you see, touch of class, but hasn't really settled just yet. But then Eriksen for me is not that normal person you'd have the sort of the legs next to him. I guess Kobe Mainu is normally that player, but he's injured, I guess, with pushing Fernandes further forward. But they didn't really play with actual wingers, I think. So Garnacho dropped to the bench. We knew that Diallo was injured. So I think now they're sort of trying to make it more central with Xerxes and Højlund. I mean, Mark, going into that game, seeing that Man United lineup, did you have anything to fear?
I think they're a little light on the bench when you look. Okay, they can bring in Garnacho and Casemiro, but beyond that, and Lindelof towards the end. But beyond that, I think it was all academy sort of players. But at the same time, I thought it was pretty full strength. I mean, with the, because of the winger injuries they had to bring in Xerxes and Eriksen. But still, it's not a bad team. And I did some quick maths on this, right? And we're going to be generous here, and we're not going to count the squad the player value of the subs. But the value of their players is over double of what we put on the pitch. So I don't really like it when we hear sort of the media make excuses, been like, oh, he hasn't really been back. Like, he has 400 million on the pitch, so kind of would expect better from that. So yeah, and I think I mentioned previously, I think they were going to put out a pretty strong squad because this is one of the 2 chances that they have to get silverware. But yeah, on our day, we can beat them, and we did beat them. So I'm pretty happy with how things turned out.
And I think it was quite evident when, you look at the Man United bench, like you say, and they could only, I think, bench 7 out of the possible 9 players. Yeah. So it was very evident that it was a very good time to play Man United and seek that revenge. So I guess going into the game and we sort of started off, it seemed very sort of cagey, but at the beginning of the game, it seemed like better chances were falling to sort of Man United. I think I cast my mind back to Bruno Fernandes. I think he had a shot from distance, parried away by Leno. And, there was, I think, a chance on the edge again from Ugarte. And that was kind of where we were keeping Man United, which was on that edge of our box, and they were having pot shots. But did you find that we were potentially a little bit too, respectful to Man United at Old Trafford, and maybe the occasion sort of got to Fulham because we never really seemed to get going, did we, Dave? It just seemed to be a wave after Man United players before we really found our stride in sort of like the 30th minute, maybe in the half-hour mark.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think wasn't too impressed with how we performed in the first half, to be honest. It was a real pleasure to go in at half-time 1-0 up, because normally it's, them playing dreadful and nicking a late goal. Whereas it was kind of the reversal in the first half last night, where we just looked a little bit off it going forward. A lot of moves were breaking down, in the final third before that ball into the box. We know that we struggle against 3 centre-backs anyway, because our kind of game plan is to use the wide areas, and that's why our shots created through the centre is so low, because it's been a real game plan of ours to kind of get Robinson away down the left and Traore away down the right, with all those link-up plays with the various fullbacks and midfielders around them. But I just found that every time it kind of got there, it was pinging it in and they were clearing it, because they've got obviously Maguire, De Ligt, big guys that can handle that. And you're right. I think that Man United were pretty poor as well in that first half, but maybe had slightly more chances. Nothing, clear cut in that first half, I'd say, from them. I do remember the Fernandes one, which Leno kind of scooped up, didn't he? It probably should save that, really. So that, there was a few little kind of half chances they had. But yeah, a bit of a non-event until the goal right at the end.
And I think there were some elements where we really saw the best of Bassi in my eyes, which was, I think, every time Højlund or Xerxes tried to get him in behind, there were some moments where Bassi looked almost second favourite to get to the ball, and he's just so strong. He's just so quick and so strong that he just pushes them out of the way like they're not even there, and then and then he's got this calmness on the ball that is really developed, and I think it's really been helped having sort of Anderson next to him, to sort of element that calmness onto him. And you saw it multiple times where Højlund just got sent for a hot dog, and Bassi then turns on the ball, drives with it, and just takes it forward. And it's just so nice to have that kind of player in the centre of your defence. And it was almost like the calmness there we didn't really see further up the pitch, where I think Anderson and Bassi were quite comfortable. There was a chance, like you say, Højlund trying to get across the face of Bassi, and they managed to defend. And Jim has beaten me to the punch. This is why I shouldn't ramble. Now I look like I'm just reading the chat and just going off of that. But Jim is quite right. Iwobi was the one who I thought was struggling with that composure, where he really uncharacteristic. He would take the ball. There was a moment, I think, on the left-hand side where I think Robinson played it out to him, and the right back Mazraoui was nowhere to be seen. All he had to do was sort of take it down the line, and he dribbled it straight out of play, almost like when your controller dies on FIFA. Like, he just can't do anything, and it just sort of goes out. And it's almost the same. You had Iwobi and Traore just didn't seem to have that touch of calmness about them, where, get a foot on the ball, get your passes done early, and then start to sort of go into the game. They just seem to really stutter, and there was elements where I just really wanted Traore just to get at Dalot. I don't think Dalot is a very good defender, and I think De Ligt was. And I was talking to a mate of mine at the pub yesterday. Like De Ligt, fantastic at Ajax, I believe, fantastic at Juve. Fell off at Bayern Munich. I don't know what happened there, and then suddenly he's now found himself in a depleted Man United side. He's really low on confidence, and when you just want someone like Traore, just to run at them, get the ball, knock it past him. If it's your first touch in the game and it runs out for a goal kick, I don't mind that. But when you're not even trying, especially when Traore's way of playing and his methodology of playing is basically his pace, I just didn't see that. And I think the same thing with Iwobi as well. You just weren't seeing them settling. And I wonder, and I mean, Mark, coming to you, do you feel that was potentially the occasion, or do you feel like it was, dare I say, an Almiron masterclass of how to stop Iwobi and Traore? You're already laughing, so I'm guessing it's
yeah, the masterclass of making Iwobi get temporarily confused and dribble the ball out himself. You're absolutely right. I was very frustrated with Iwobi early on because, yes, he had good crosses, but some of the basics, like that dribbling incident, some of the passes were unforced errors, and it's super uncharacteristic. I don't know if he's just getting a little bit more tired as the season drags on, because I don't think this is the Iwobi we had at the beginning of the season. Traore as well. Barton made a really good point in the Discord chat. Traore is a pretty devout Muslim. So right now it's Ramadan, which means they can't eat or drink once the sun is up. So I don't know if that was to conserve energy. I don't know if he was told to try and defend more and not leave Castagna out to dry. But yes, that was an interesting point. But he should be going for that. That's what we bring him for. And it put a little bit of doubt in Dalot's mind as well, because I thought Dalot was one of the brighter talents for United yesterday. He was having a fair bit of joy going down that flank, even more so later on. We'll touch on it when Garnacho comes on, and that was a few heart-stopping moments there. But yeah, our attack was disjointed. Just as much as our defense was solid, our attack was kind of a bit all over the place, unforced errors. Same from United as well. It was at times like watching a championship match. Neither side could really string 3 or 4 good passes together, and it was just utterly bizarre to watch.
Yeah, you're quite right. And I think, yeah, it was just poor from both teams, really. It was just, no one really took the game by the scruff of the neck and really wanted to dominate. And that's what I thought this was our chance. This was a depleted Man United team, and we thought, Berger and Lukic, I thought, were fantastic. But it just comes down to that final third. We just couldn't get a ball. It was at the amount of times. And I know thoughts back to the Emil Smith-Rowe goal with the cross from Traore on his left foot, but Traore just seemed to be touching the ball with his right. So he was sort of like right foot, cut to his left, and then do this absolutely terrible, awkward-looking kick, like to cross the ball in with his left foot, and it just wasn't working. It just wasn't beating the first man, and Iwobi was very much doing the same. His crossing was awful, and then out of nowhere, we finally found Iwobi with an inch-perfect ball to Lukic running into the box unopposed. And for me, this comes back to a point that you made, Dave, is we really struggle with those 3-man defences. But I think as soon as you start getting people in the box and you start asking questions of those 3-man defence, if you've got 3 men on Muniz, then you're not going to have any chance. But if you start to throw men into the box, they're going to find these gaps. And they were too preoccupied with Muniz's run that they just let Lukic just run in unopposed. And I mean, Dave, you've got to think that he's got to do a bit better there, hasn't he? It was a free header, very inch-perfect ball for me. Got to be on target, or am I being too harsh?
Yeah, so I was going to make the point on Iwobi is like, even when he's playing badly, he's still got those little moments of magic like that, doesn't he? And it was a fantastic ball. He spotted the run of Lukic, and he's played it in fantastically well. I thought Lukic got a little bit ahead of it, so he was kind of having to hold his run back. But generally, yes, I think he should do better. He should just manage his run a little bit better. And I think it was you should have been a header on target. And I think if he hits the target, it's probably a goal. So Little moment of a magic there from Iwobi, and just a bit unfortunate about the timing of the run. And yeah, that was quite close to the end of the half, wasn't it? So just before the goal. And it was probably our first real chance.
And I think the crosses that we mentioned before that, if I'm honest, I think they were all collected by Onana pretty much. And I almost think that was the right game plan. He's a shaky goalkeeper, but we just didn't seem to put anyone on Onana. He just seemed to be unopposed all the time, sort of collecting the ball. And I think there was one cross by Traore, one of his left-footed crosses, which I was just moaning about, but it seemed to go across Maguire, and he seemed to run across the line of Onana, and then Onana just seems to, when you watch it back, he drops his hands, almost like he thinks that Maguire's about to head it out, and then it just hits him in the chest, and he seems really surprised. But that was those sort of moments where I feel we could have really troubled the defence, and Onana is just, Muniz is a big lad. Get him on Onana, make him sort of ask questions of his keeping ability. Like, are you going to come and claim this, or are you going to reach over me? I don't think you are. And he just really struggles in that kind of physical sort of challenges in the box. And I just don't think it was like half a game plan. We were dropping the ball onto him, but we just didn't seem to be sort of having anyone sort of physically challenge him and try to sort of make it those mistakes which we've seen throughout the season. But, you know, we come down to a very lackluster first half. Both sides probably content going in at 0-0. And then we get a corner very much in the same position or the same side of 2 years ago. And I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it is very, 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 very similar to the Mitrovic goal from 2 years ago, where Pereira does this kind of low cross into outswinging to the front post. Somebody gets a flick on. I think in 2 years ago it was Diop to the back post. This time it was a good flick on from Muniz, and Bassi's there to nod it in at the back stick. I think Mazarawi was probably the closest person, but I mean, that's a mismatch on its own, in my opinion. But I mean, Mark clearly won off the training ground and a well-worked goal for Fulham.
Yeah, love to see it. Like you said, totally intentional. Love the flick on, takes most of the defense out of the game. And it poses problems for the opposition who are defending, because if they're not anticipating the flick on, right, they're probably thinking, okay, who are the threats? Let's look at Berger. He's massive. Anderson, also pretty massive. Muniz. We're going to dedicate our best defensive resources to man marking these guys or making sure they don't get their head on the ball. You wouldn't really consider someone like Bassi too much of a threat, but then he gets the flick on. It's a one-on-one. Everyone's a little bit confused, except, you know, the guys who've drilled it. So Bassi, yep, like David said, Bassi reacted really well. Gets it in the back of the net. Brilliant move. Super, super happy to see it. Yeah, well planned. But like you guys said, in the context of the entire first half, maybe 0-0 is a bit more fair. But, you know, we had the focus when it mattered, and that's why we were 1-0 up.
And it's fantastic. I'll come to you in a second, David. It's fantastic when you watch it back and you can hear the Fulham fans singing "You Look Like a Rat" to Bruno Fernandes just before the goal. And it's just, you know, if Carlsberg did goals, probably the best in the world. It was one of those moments. But Dave, sorry, your thoughts on the goal?
No, just as you said, it was quite similar to before. I was just looking at the XG stats for the first half, and Man United were 0.34 and we were 0.51. So it does suggest 0-0 at half time was the right result. Most of our XG came from that goal, that shot and goal. So it was our only shot on target, but just a well-worked set piece. And I think it's just interesting at the start, up until about December, we were all moaning about set pieces because I don't think we'd scored from one in something like 34 games, I think it was at the time. And all of a sudden now, you know, whether it's Lukic or whether it's Pereira, we seem to have found a way. And, you know, I can think of 3 or 4 over the last 2 months that we've scored from. So that's really pleasing that we brought that into our game, especially with games like that, because we were struggling to obviously create good goal scoring chances in that first half. We found Man United's defence hard to break down, as we have done all season. So to have set pieces in our arsenal, it gave us a chance. And God, I love that dad joke by David Wellington now. We've turned the corner, he says. Oh, it's brilliant.
We've turned the corner.
Round of applause.
Wow.
So yeah, just wanted to make that point, really.
Yeah, no, you're quite right, and I think we're finally gathering an identity again from set pieces, and you can see just how important set pieces are. Because we didn't create anything, like you say, and I remember the board going up to sort of 1 minute at a time, and I was thinking, what a fantastic time to score this would be, and it just shows how important that set piece routine is, and to make us go, it just changes the game, the dynamic. You're asking, Almerum's having a completely different discussion with his team, going in from 0-0 to 1-0 down, and he start to ask questions and start to sort of rejig things. So it is such a big goal. Just before we move on to the second half, you mentioned set pieces, and there was something really interesting for me, which was Pereira getting fouled running to probably about 20 yards from goal, and he walked away from the free kick and gave it to Lukic. Mark, what were your thoughts on that? I mean, it was a piss poor effort.
It was terrible.
Kind of.
It didn't even break the wall.
But I mean, I guess the two-parter really is: were you surprised that Pereira, despite being fouled, walked away from this free kick to score at Old Trafford after making a point of letting him go, but also Lukic being the one to take the free kick and then the actual result from the free kick? I guess your points on those, please.
Yeah, I mean, interesting moment in the game. He does the whole show and dance, doesn't he? When I think he feels the slightest of touches, but wins the decision, as the media like to say whenever Harry Kane used to get a penalty. Pereira won that decision. Yeah, I think it's because, and Pereira should be starting in the near future based on performances, and we'll touch on Smith Rowe a little bit later. But Lukic has been taking some corners, and I think Lukic is almost like when Pereira isn't readily available, he's going to be the designated set piece taker, and maybe Marco wants him to do things other than corners. So yeah, that was not a good showing. So Pereira should be taking most of them going forward, but I guess it kind of distributes it gives Marco more tactical flexibility if other people can take set pieces. So yeah, but it was a poor effort, wasn't it? Hopefully that will improve going forward. That's pretty much all I have to say on it. What were you guys' thoughts on it?
I mean, the only thing I was going to add was I don't sit here and think in a very naive world where Pereira plants that top corner. I mean, we know it's probably going to be a very, very similar showing, but it was just one of those things of, it's quite funny where in my head that clearly Pereira is the set piece taker, is being convinced otherwise, and then you see your teammate do that and you're thinking, absolute joke, but there you go. But I mean, with that, I remember watching one of these sort of YouTube videos with Fulham players, and I think it was some these freestyle YouTubers, but I remember seeing Berger absolutely lamp one, postage stamp, right in the top corner of a free kick. I think it was him, Pereira and Smith Rowe, and just watching Berger just say, yeah, that's me done, and then walk away as this ball goes into the back of the net. I mean, I was tempted to see him have a go, but obviously he doesn't seem to be in the ranking. But I guess final points on that, Dave, was there anything that you thought about that sort of situation and that you thought
I mean, I think
surprising?
everything what's been covered already. Nothing to add on what's been covered already. We don't really have a just going back to what Mark was saying, we don't really have a free kick taker in the squad, do we? Like that's kind of prolific, or in fact, I don't remember the last time we scored direct from a free kick.
I want to say
Willian was it?
Forest, where he crossed it and it bounced all the way in. I mean, that was technically direct.
Yeah,
from
that's
a free
a kind
kick,
of cross
but
goal. I'm not giving that. I don't count that one. But, yeah, it's we don't really have a player that's a threat from there, so I don't really mind them sharing it around, to be honest.
No, absolutely. But I mean, second half then. So Man United going in 1-0 down. They clearly had 5 minutes or so. I think he gave 5 minutes to the team. Nothing really happened. So, Garnacho comes on for Ugarte, and then a straight swap for Lindelof for Euro, which I thought was a very bizarre one. I don't really rate Lindelof as a player. But I thought their problems were a bit further back. Unless you were changing it up, then it didn't really make much sense. But Garnacho, as much as I dislike him, I don't think. Do you know what? I don't dislike him. I think it's more the Man United fans who were sort of trying to convince everyone that he was the second coming of Cristiano Ronaldo when he first burst onto the scene. And, you're just thinking he's a very good player, but he's not, Ballon d'Or winner or anything like that. But he did seem to give, Paul Castagna a little bit of a runaround to sort of in that second half. And I think that's where their goal came from was, Garnacho, I think, picks it up on the left-hand side. Castagna's come out to meet him. Dalot is beyond him, but Iwobi's nowhere to be found. So, he gets a sort of a free pass and a free cross at goal, towards goal, and picks out Bruno Fernandes, who's been picked up by absolutely no one. And out of all the players that you would want to sort of pick up the ball at that position, you'd want anyone but Bruno Fernandes. I mean, Dave, the goal, clearly something that we could have avoided, and it just seemed to be poor defending all round, really.
It came a bit out of the blue. I remember thinking at the time, because we had a lot of the ball, if I remember right, at the start of the second half. We weren't doing a lot with it, but we seemed to have a lot of the ball, and I just remember that breaking down the left hand side. And I think you got to be fair to the guy. That's a fantastic finish, especially with his left foot. Yeah. A lot of people, everyone's quick to jump on Fernandes, and I understand why. He's a pain as an opposition player. He's a moany kind of moaning at the ref all the time, but there's no doubt his quality, and he's clearly far and above their best player. And I think he showed why there in that little moment, because to kind of get the contact that he did on it with his left foot and swing it away from Leno, I thought at the time that was a really good goal. And it was just a shame, really, because we'd got in front, and I was hoping that we would, for once maybe we could get that second goal. We never seem to do it, but for once it would have been nice just to get ahead in this one. But that one went in, and all of a sudden you're starting to think, oh my god, is this Groundhog Day? And they're going to turn it round again. So yeah, it was all I can say is really I thought it was a good goal. Could we have done a little bit better out wide? Possibly, but credit to Fernandes. I did note on BBC that they did pick up on the fact that Smith Rowe didn't track him into the box. When to kind of defend against him, which was a good observation. I thought, he did leave him. He kind of switched off in that moment, but whether he would have actually got back and been able to stop him scoring is another question. But yeah, that's all I really have to say. Good goal.
Yeah, and I think Colm has rightly pointed out exactly what you just said. Smith Rowe got caught ball watching for their goal, but I do wonder about it though, because I didn't touch upon it, but Smith Rowe actually came on for Traore on the wing, which I was really happy with, because I do think that Smith Rowe could be a better winger than a central attacking midfielder, just because of the way that he loves to cut in on that right hand onto his right foot. But I'm trying to think that, given that situation and with Traore on the pitch, would Bruno Fernandes really be Traore's man in that situation? I don't think he would be. For me, Fernandes started as an attacking midfielder, and I don't think that formation changed when Garnacho entered the frame. So for me, it's got to be either Lukic or Berger who's got to pick him up. And I think for that goal, Berger does try and close him down, and that's kind of probably an issue why Leno doesn't really get to the ball. He does unfortunately go underneath. I think Berger sort of throws himself at it, and it goes underneath his feet and goes through him, and that's hard for a goalkeeper to see. But Mark, are we probably a bit too harsh singling out Smith Rowe in that situation, or do you think that he's got to be a bit smarter? And once you freeze frame it, you do sort of see that Smith Rowe is the closest player. He is looking at Bruno in that situation and doesn't track him. Does he sort of feel not my job, or
no?
I
think
like
you can tell when you play the tape. I think you can tell, because he immediately drops his head because he realizes he was the closest guy. And I think this really puts, you're right, he came on as a winger, so you could probably argue it both ways, right? But in that moment, he's the closest person. I think Mourinho said it on when they did the Tottenham show way back on Amazon Prime. But like, defending is everyone's job. If we're going to leave one man not defending, let it be Muniz or someone else, right? Everyone else should be back to help out, and just not Fernandes, right? He's really probably doing a one-man job, or maybe a 2 or 3-man job alongside Garnacho and Amad Diallo, of keeping United out of the relegation zone. So just don't let him have a shot from just outside the box unopposed, and that's what he got, and he places it well. I don't know how much better we could have done. I don't know if Lukic was still on, or had Reedy come on at that point. I guess the argument I was going to make is the Pereira ESR thing never works defensively. It's just terrible. But yeah, maybe Lukic was still on, or Reedy, whichever one of the more defensive midfielders. They probably should have had an eye on that as well, especially with Fernandes being the danger man. And I think that was a turning point in the match. I think United were really up for it then. We had our opportunities as well. It wasn't a one-way battering, but they realized they were in it once that goal went in.
Yeah, and I think Smith Rowe, apart from that moment, actually did quite well, I thought, coming on the left-hand side. And I think he probably had our best chances of that half, really. I think there's a real magical moment where Robinson picks it up on the left, boxes it, and Pereira does like a little back heel like he loves to do. Sort of similar to that Willian chance, or Muniz chance a couple of weeks ago. And it really annoys me how close the ref is to this situation. It's almost like he's defending for Man United. But once that pop-off comes from Pereira, he's then having to get the ball out of his feet. He's having to sort of get away from the referee so he can get a shot off. And he forces a good save from Onana. And then I think later on as well, he is on right-hand side of the box and pulls a shot. And that is a fantastic save for Onana. I'm probably going to be one of his biggest critics. I don't think he's anywhere close to being one of the best goalkeepers in the world. He's an absolute calamity and a disaster waiting to happen. But there's that moment where Smith Rowe basically has a very similar chance to, I would say, to Bruno Fernandes, where he's placed it into that bottom corner. And when you look at it, it's almost hit the bottom of his glove, kind of fingertip on his little pinky. It's a ridiculous save. And it was looking destined for that bottom corner. And I thought, I mean, Dave, for you, did you think that was it? Did you think that was the chance where we're going to go 2-1?
It was a good chance. Those two Smith Rowe chances were our only shots on goal in the second half. And so you're right, he did have an impact. And actually, I thought he tried to create more through the middle. And yeah, at times he was guilty of kind of giving it away or not paying the right pass. But I think he was just trying to make something happen. And you'd expect someone in the number 10 to do that. So I think we can forgive him a bit for that. And I think his substitution had a bit of impact yesterday. He certainly wasn't it wasn't a disappearing act from him, let's put it that way, which we've seen a lot this season. But yeah, he kind of got in the end of probably our two best chances in that half. We had a lot of the ball, but nothing was really happening for us. And as the half was going on, Man United, as you said, once they got that goal, they were the team that were kind of pushing, and they did have a couple of pretty good chances towards the end of the game, especially once they took Højlund off. And just on point on Højlund, I mean, Man United nearly spent 70 million on that guy, and the reason I'm pointing that out is we've a lot of our fans have kind of been saying we've got to make this, we've got to sign a striker, we've got to splash the money. If you're not careful, that's what you get. I thought he was dreadful last night, and he's been dreadful against us before. I just don't see where that money's gone. He looks like he's got to be amongst the worst Premier League strikers at the moment. And they did themselves a favour when they took him off. I'd much rather Muniz all day than Højlund at 70 million. But that's my tangent over. After he came off, they did start to create a few more chances, and actually there was kind of, on the edge of my seat in the 90th minute. I'm sure we'll get to that. But when I think there was a big long ball forward that Garnacho kind of looked he was almost through on goal on. But yeah.
Well, it's interesting you talk about Højlund and Xerxes. You know, both big signings. I mean, Højlund galactic money is like 70 million, but I mean Xerxes was 35 to 40 million, and both those strikers have the same amount of Premier League goals as Rodrigo Muniz this season, combined. So, you know, who would you rather have? I mean, I know who I'd rather have. I'd rather have Raul Jimenez and Muniz, who seem to be playing off each other and both having actually, given the circumstances, actually genuinely quite good goal scoring seasons, rather than these sort of bit part players that come for big money and will take time to settle. I think Højlund, for me, there is a player there. He's a strong lad. I just think that Man United is not the best fit for him. I reckon if Højlund was to go to somewhere like Chelsea, where he's actually got a lot of creative bodies around him, then he actually might hit the ground running. But yeah, do you know what? I was really impressed with Obi, who came on. The striker, he's 17. You know, to put that into even worse perspective, Dave, that means he was born, I believe, in 2007. So he's actually like 3 years old in my head. But it's ridiculous that he came on and he was actually quite a thorn in the side. I thought that he was sort of getting on the ball. There was a chance, I think, where right at the death, which we'll get to in a bit, but he seemed to have some shots, and Leno made some amazing saves. But you're quite right. You talked about Garnacho. I think he had one chance where Castagna sort of led him down the left-hand side, and then he hit the side netting, and Castagna actually defended that quite well, I thought. But then you say there was Xerxes into Obi, knocked it back, and he sort of lofted it forward, and you just thought, he's got the yard of pace on Castagna here. He's in, and he just doesn't catch it cleanly at all. And a great save from Leno, and you know, it's just calm, right? Yeah. Take a breath there for a moment. But I mean, Mark, when you're starting to see those chances for Garnacho, you're starting to sort of get flashbacks at the Cottage a few seasons ago, where Garnacho, I think he scored the 2-1. He scored the winner late on in the 90th minute. You just know he's got it in his locker, and he just seems to perform against us all the time.
Oh, 100%. Like, as a Fulham fan, we are, you know, we have our PTSD. It's always in the dying embers of the game where our boys are tired, and you can see it coming. And those long balls were really causing us trouble, especially with Garnacho's pace. And like you said, Obi, when I talk to my colleagues who support United, this is what they want more of. They want young, hungry kids who want to prove themselves on low wages, fighting for the badge. I don't think that's crazy or unusual. I think every football fan wants to see that. And this guy didn't look out of place at all. In fact, like you guys said, he was the best out of Højlund and Xerxes. 2 huge opportunities from him. I know it's not a United podcast, but I just thought like it's important that we mention that, because he was a real threat alongside Garnacho. So yeah. Glad it didn't turn out that way. Leno, man of the match for me, based on those saves. But you know, we touched on it earlier. If it wasn't for Leno, definitely Batty as well. So comfortable against their attack, and composed, calm. And I think that's the difference between good and elite, right? A good defender defends, but an elite one does it with composure and knows how to retain control of the ball and distribute it back instead of just get it out immediately.
No, absolutely. And I think you're quite right. And Leno being man of the match, some huge saves. And there's one that really sticks out for me, which was Obi getting it on the left-hand side of the box. And he just almost like a reaction, just puts his left hand up like this, and it just clips and goes over the bar. And I'm thinking, when you see that from behind the goal, that was in. That was a fantastic finish from a really promising talent, and I thought that could have been curtains. You know, there was nothing about Fulham at that point that really thought that if we went 2-1 down, that we'd be able to rally and come back. I think we just didn't seem to have that attacking edge, did we, Dave? I don't know whether we were just happy for 1-1 or we just seemed to switch off and run out of ideas.
Yeah, so I was just having a little look at the first half of extra time because that's when that incident happened. It was right at the end of it. And you're right, that should have been a goal. It's an amazing save. It's a little bit lucky as well because he's not quite, he hasn't seen it hit his hand. He's just moved his hand up, but he's made himself big and that's all you can do. And, he's flicked it over, but 9 times out of 10, I think that goes in. So yeah, it was huge from Leno. But yeah, Man United kind of had the better chances. Well, they had the only chances in the first half of extra time. We didn't have a shot on goal, so it was a quiet half that they were kind of leading. And yeah, I think it was probably at that time I was running out of a little bit of ideas. The only bright spark I would say that gave us a little bit of life was Sessegnon, who came
Absolutely.
on the right wing, and particularly I remember him having chances in the second half of extra time, which were, he just looked really dangerous, didn't he? A good outlet, and I wonder now if Traore's got a knock, and given the fact that we've got Nelson out and Wilson out, will Cess get a little bit of an opportunity further forward? And if he does, he looks confident. I'm kind of all for it. I'd like to see what he can do because, if he could start to, get some more goals like he was doing in his first spell at Fulham, maybe he's what we've been missing all along on the wide areas. We do need someone out there who's more of a goal threat. And yeah, he was a bit unlucky in that second half of extra time when he turned in and Anana saved it. That would have been an incredible way to win that match, by the way. But yeah, he was our only real bright spark in extra time, I thought. So yeah, just pleased Leno and helped us get over the line.
So there's a question for you. Would you have taken winning on penalties, or would you have taken a Sessegnon to late winner to win 2-1? I'll go to you, Dave, first.
I think I'm just so happy that we came away with a win, no matter how it happened. I know that's such a on the fence answer, but yeah, it would have been nice to win in normal time. I think I'll lean that way because penalties is a lottery, and we can claim if we'd won it in normal time that it was more deserved. So I think I'll go with that. But both. I think it was, and then also a lot of our fans who were at the game would have been able to get home a little bit quicker too. So let's go with that.
A lot of people wouldn't have missed trains, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I know Cottage Tactico missed his train for a fact. Mark, would you have preferred a Sessegnon winner, or are you happy with penalties?
I'd still go with the Cess win. Man, about missing the trains. They were even referencing that on the TV, right? The commentator's like, well, I hope we wrap this up quick. And it's like, come on, guys, it's your job to. Surely you would enjoy watching more football. But yeah, I think I like Cess's directness. I think he has a point to prove. I think he's done himself no harm in how he's played, with pace, with intelligence, a bit of risk taking as well. A decent stop from Onana right at the end, but maybe if he, drags it a little bit wider and a little bit lower, that goes in. I'm not sure, but I'm glad he took the shot because so many times we see our guys hesitate and kind of look for the safe way out, and we need those players to take those shots. That's, we can't always play it into the back of the net. But yeah, short answer, Cess 2-1. Would have loved it, giving it large to the crowd.
Yeah, it would have been magical, and I've got a real soft spot for Cess, like most Fulham fans, I imagine. But it would have just been nice for a Fulham boy to really stick one to Man United. It would have been really nice. But I mean, he's turning into a bit of a shrewd signing, isn't he? In a way that a lot of people were saying, why are we bothering re-signing him on a free? I just don't think he's. Yeah, I'm. Do you know what, Dave? I'm thinking back to those injury tables and everything that you were posting probably on the daily of his injury problems. But given the fact that we needed someone to back up, or a left back backup, but also now given the situation with Wilson injury, Reece Nelson, and now Traore picked up a knock, that he's actually proving to be quite an asset given the basically he can play on either wing and at left back and fill in those places when we are hitting sort of the final leg of the season where fatigue sets in, right? That's a question for you, Dave.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think at the start of the season, I was kind of offering a devil's advocate on the whole transfer, really, and that he'd obviously had lots and lots of injuries, and he was being signed as backup left back, and but I've just been really impressed actually. Every time I've seen him, he's played really well in cup opportunities at wing back. He's been one of our most creative threats down the wing, and actually now we're starting to see that. He's come on the wing a couple of times, which and we all know that he can play there. We saw it all those years ago, and he looks dangerous. So I think fair play to him. He seems really focused, motivated. He seems fit and confident, and I'd like to see more of him. So I'm all for it. Really, I don't mind being wrong when Cess turns around and does the business. I can jump straight on that bandwagon for sure.
I'm gonna jump on the bandwagon here and also hold my hands up and support Dave. I thought he was a vibe signing. I was not impressed at all. I thought it was cheap. I thought it was an emotional play, and he's proving me wrong. And I'm happy to be proven wrong. I love it when Fulham players perform. If all of them could perform and I could be wrong every week, then and we start thinking about Europe, getting into Europe, that's great. So really impressive what we've seen. And to you guys' point, I do think we get more out of him further up the pitch. Let's see how that plays out. I don't know if he's the strongest guy. He's definitely very clever. I like that. So you're going to need that. And maybe if we can combine that with a bit of pace, who knows what can happen. But I wonder if he gets pushed up further and we look for a different left back if and when Robbo leaves us in summer.
Yeah. No, I do think he's not going to be the Robinson replacement if he does leave. I just can't see him to be that starting left back for us, unless we switch to a back five with wing backs and he becomes our left wing back. Then that's a potential scenario. But hey, then back to the game at hand. We went into penalties, and I don't know how your guys' memory is of penalties, but I'm quite fixated on the Preston penalty shootout where, our goalkeepers are very famous to, and not just from the Preston game, we are very famous for not getting anywhere near saving penalties. And Leno had that kind of badge lingering over him a little bit of never saves penalties. So what's the point? You may as well just have no one in goal instead of Leno. But, did you have any... I guess a quick fire. Did you have any ounce of confidence going into this that a goalkeeper would make a save for Fulham, or we'd have to rely on Man United missing the target completely? I guess Mark first.
Leno has saved a penalty, I think, for us. I think that was Vardy on that crazy 5-3 towards the end of the season when they were already relegated. But you're right. It's not so much I don't think Leno can't save them, but I thought one of our guys would screw it up. They would do sort of a weak sort of, was it who was the guy at Everton who took it against us previously? And it was like a completely crap penalty. I think Rodak saved it or something like that. But I thought one of our guys would do something low and slow, and Onana would be able to catch it more than thinking Leno is a ghost. But yeah, they're such a 50-50, aren't they? And with our luck, it's more like 80-20. So I thought United not had it in the bag, but I thought they were favored in especially being at home at a certain, I guess our boys were way in the back. So I was facing just purely United fans. I was not optimistic at that moment.
Yes. Striking at the Stretford end as well. I mean, Dave, were you similar vibes or were you quietly confident?
I wasn't thinking too much about Leno or Onana. I was thinking more about who'd be taking them for us. And I think actually, if you think back on the Preston game in the League Cup when we went out, almost maybe that was a good exercise for us ahead of this. Because I just felt that, we had Raul on the pitch, we had Willian on the pitch. We'd seen at Preston, some really good penalties actually by a number of our first team. And that gave me a little bit of confidence that we'd be competitive in this shootout. It's not like we'd come into this having had, it's not like England, where every time England have a penalty shootout, you know what's going to happen. We score them, and we had done earlier in this season, about 20 times at Preston. So I wonder if that exercise actually helped the players in this one, because all of the penalties that we took were really, really good, particularly Sander Berge's. And I don't want to move on from Sander Berge before we end this, because I thought he was brilliant yesterday at the whole game. And then we touched on Leno's excellence and Bassi as well being a rock. But God, Berge was brilliant. He never really put a foot wrong yesterday. He was solid, and his penalty was the icing on the cake for what was a brilliant performance.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he's really turned into probably one of the signings of our season anyway. Just there was a lot of question marks. I think very unjust question marks as well when he got relegated with Sheffield United. He got relegated with Burnley, and apparently that makes you a terrible player. I just found that really unjust. But he has really proven that he is quite the Rolls-Royce midfielder, and I think he's only going to get better the more that he sort of settles into Marco's sort of ways. I think we've seen it with Lukic that, you know, it takes a bit of time to get used to Marco's ways, and it can be, you know, up to 12 months at times. And the fact that he's hit the ground running in a fashion that he has just shows what a special player he is. And I think he's only going to get better. But a fantastic penalty, though. I mean, did I expect Berger to lamp it top corner? Not really. I thought it was a fantastic penalty, and really kind of goes back to my point of get him on set pieces, see what he can do with a free kick, because if he can do that to a penalty, I reckon he could probably float in a free kick pretty well. But I mean, for me, the usual suspects kind of turned up and really did sink a penalty. I think Raul, I really had no question that he was gonna score. I was very surprised by probably Robinson, the calmness to sort of plant that bottom corner. But for me, we had the right mental, or the players with the right mentality on the pitch to be so composed in those moments. I think, you know, Raul, Willian, and Berger are real sort of big game players. I think Robinson as well, given his new sort of captaincy, I think he's got that element of composure. I think in my eyes, Mark, once I saw Xerxes and Lindelof, I did sort of start to see a little bit of question in their demeanour, that they weren't too confident when they stepped up. Did you have sort of a similar feeling?
Not me, but I believe Gentleman Jim did on the Fulham broadcast. Like, Lindelof steps up and he doesn't look like he knows how to take it, or something like that. He's just purely throwing shade. I don't know if it was the way his shoulders were moving or something, but I was like, okay, interesting comment. And then, of course, Leno saves it. Going back to Robbo for a second, I love his style. It's like he knows the pressure's on him, so he like overcompensates and looking like he doesn't care, and then he just like rolls it in. That was beautiful. But yeah, but I guess when looking back on it now, and then you see Xerxes come up, oh, that guy, yeah, he does not look confident at all. He looks despondent before he's about to take the penalty. So yeah, good opportunity for us and two huge saves. I know, what were you guys' take on it?
Yeah, go Dave.
Yeah, no, fantastic saves. First one, just read it, went the right way, kept it out. Second one looked a bit soft, saved it with his legs. And I'm just really pleased for Leno. You know, hopefully he gets a bit of confidence for that as well, and we can see him make a save from a penalty in a league match. That would be great. But yeah, and I think, you know, I noticed earlier he won the Fulham Man of the Match. I think Bruno Fernandes won the actual BBC Man of the Match on the night, which was quite interesting.
Wow.
But yeah, Leno won the Fulham Man of the Match. It's hard to argue with that, given those moments that he's created in that game. So as well as Bassi and Berger played, I think I'm happy to give Leno this one. And on we go. Scenes at the end, you know, fantastic scenes. We saw Alex Iwobi's Snapchat was flying around on X, and the players really enjoyed that one. It was great to see behind the scenes of their celebrations, and we didn't have to wait too long either, did we, to find out who was next? So yeah,
no, excellent. And I think you're quite right. It's just the togetherness of this team just seems really awesome, doesn't it? I mean, the faces of the lads on the pitch when Leno makes the save is just pure jubilation. They just absolutely seem to be playing for one another and seem to really want to progress together, and it just seems really good. I mean, the one thing I will just touch upon very quickly is you talked about Bassey's social media. Unfortunately, he has come under a bit of racial abuse off the back of that, which is absolutely disgusting. And obviously, I hope that it's difficult, isn't it, this day and age where they're always behind a player account or a parody account or all completely anonymous. But I mean, no one needs to endure that just because he had a good game as well. Like, it's almost like a badge of endearment now of, if you get racially abused, but off the back of a performance, you've had an absolute stormer. So, that's one way to look at it. But I mean, we're hoping that, we stand with Bassey, and we're hoping that it doesn't affect him too bad. And hopefully it's something that we don't see more of in the future. But, until social media, in my eyes, until social media start creating accounts and having to verify your identity, it's never going to stop. But no, it's disgusting, and I don't know if you guys have anything else to add on that, but it's just one of those things, unfortunately. And it seems really stupid to say that it's one of those things, because it's getting more and more common, and it shouldn't, but it's where we are today. But obviously, hopefully Bass isn't too affected and carries on his great form at the moment. But that's all we can say on it, I suppose. But no, it did dampen a little bit of a fantastic win, but a fantastic moment. But yeah, as we've looked on the screen here, Man United may have had more shots, but we came out with more possession, more passes, seemed to really want to take control of the game. And I mean, if you were told, a 10-year-old me, giving my age away here now, but this is about 2005. If you told me in 2005 that we would go and absolutely boss possession and passes and dominate Man United at Old Trafford, I wouldn't believe you for a second. It's one thing to say how Man United have fallen off, but one thing to say how far we've come as a team and a club. And just looking at that to say that we're now FA Cup quarter-finalists for knocking out Man United in the fashion that we did, I think is more than impressive. I mean, Mark, anything to add to that point? I mean, you got to be impressed with that and happy with that, right?
Oh, 100%. And I understand the media is always going to go for the story about the biggest club because that's going to get the most views and the most clicks and the most likes and blah, blah, blah. All right. But yeah, absolutely right. We went there, and, if you were a neutral who knew nothing about football, you would not be able to say United had a much more expensive squad, or that it was two pretty evenly matched teams. Both of them had good opportunities. So I think it was a pretty good match. And yeah, we've come a long way. No one bandies the term yo-yo anymore. There are whispers of Europe. You talk about Fulham and people can name Leno, they can name Iwobi, Smith Rowe. We've got a couple of real ballers. And even our players that aren't, the famous names or the ballers, they're all like very quietly competent, People may not know Lukic or Castagna, but they do the job and they do it well. In and out, consistent, solid 7 out of 10s usually. Castagna getting a little bit tired, but, still doing well for us. So, yeah, I'm happy where we are, but I'm also ambitious and greedy. And I want to see more, and hopefully we will this season or the next.
Absolutely. And Dave, yourself, I guess we're sort of similar in age. I mean, are you feeling the same, like really proud of how Fulham have come in the last sort of 5 to 6 years?
Well, yeah, no, for sure. I mean, we've beaten the FA Cup holders at their own. We've knocked them out at their own ground. Don't forget they knocked out Arsenal as well, didn't they? In the earlier round. So, they've got a lot of, even as bad as Man United are at the moment, they've still got this kind of big game energy that they come out with every now and again, and they give the top teams a tough time. So, and when they need to win a game, they seem to be able to. So, yeah, I'm really proud of us. I'm actually think it's, looking at those stats and you see Man United had more chances, and I think they had a higher XG. Almost that feels to me a little bit like poetic justice for the amount of times we've kind of played them off the park and lost. So I like that whole narrative around that game last night. But yeah, I think, you're asking how far Fulham have come. Well, this year, we've just seen kind of a different mentality around how we kind of can go to grounds now, big big stadiums, like St James's Park and Anfield and White Hart Lane, and Old Trafford, and pick up wins and pick up points because we just don't fear them. And that Fulham have never really had that, and as long as I can remember. That was also, that's the fourth away win. If we count that as a win, which of course we are, that is a fourth away win in a row. That's really unlike Fulham. So I'm really enjoying kind of this new mentality, and it kind of gives you hope that no matter who we get, and I know we're going to come quickly now to who we've got next, but it gives you hope that whoever we get, we've got something about us, and when it's a big game, we seem to turn up.
Absolutely. And so moving to the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, we have Fulham versus Crystal Palace at home. And it's a tough one for me in a way that, Palace obviously beat us very recently. They are an informed team. However, FA Cup is the FA Cup. And I mean, Mark, how important is it for us to continue this cup run, to have that home advantage, do you feel?
I really hope that the Cons play this right. They do the early beers. They make the ticket prices reasonable, because I think Marco's referenced it several times in press conferences as well. He wants our fans to be a tactical edge in the match. So, not everyone can if the prices are ridiculous, but I hope as many of us as is possible get in the same, really G up our boys. It is a one-off, but what worries me is I think this is a much tougher game. I think we knew that United were shaky and they had injuries. Now we're the team with the injuries, right? I think Palace, we don't know what will happen in a month's time, but they have a very strong midfield. We struggled. Okay, maybe not struggled, but it was close against one good striker for 20 minutes at United. Palace have two good strikers, and that will be a whole 90, if not more. So we really need to turn up this match. They're not infallible, but they'll be a tough test.
I think that Marco in this one has a chance, because I think in the last game against Palace, I think Marco kind of got outdone by Glasner on the day. They kind of, their tactics against us worked a treat and kind of nullified us. And, they're going to be even stronger as potentially with Wharton back. It's Wharton, isn't it? That's the name of the kid. Yep. Yeah, he's back now and looking every bit the player he was before he got injured. So, they're going to be a real tough test, but it's a good opportunity for Marco now to kind of think about that last game and how we can, be more of a threat. And, that makes me excited. And I think, look, to have a home game against a mid-table team for a chance to go to a semi-final, there's not much more you can ask for. We could have got City away, so I think this is a good fixture. And I don't think we'll be kind of as little a threat or as we would have been, as we were a couple of weeks ago against them. I think we'll be, we'll find ways to create more chances. So I think we'll be a bigger threat, and I think the players will really want it. So, I'm excited about it. I think that we've got a really good chance, considering that we're at home. I take on what Mark said about the club making sure that the pricing's right and all of those things too, to help create the atmosphere, because that will help too. If we can be the 12th man, I think we can see this one over the line.
It's within a distance, isn't it? Fulham semi-final, Wembley. It's a winnable game. It's really a winnable game. That's the thing that's going to hurt, I think, the most. I mean, it's going to be a nervy contest for both teams. I think there's going to be that element of Palace and Fulham aren't notorious for they're not cup teams. They're not notorious winners. They're both going to be going into a knockout game with that kind of, pressure. And I think it's going to be one of those sort of cagey games where neither team will want to put a foot wrong. And I think where it comes to that, we've seen it previously where we packed out the cottage for the Carabao Cup semi-final against Liverpool, where, we actually gave them a good game. And there was a lot of, the Hammersmith end standing for 90 minutes. there was an element of, this is a real atmosphere and it's going to be a tough place to come. And I think if we can replicate that against Palace, then I think for sure we win within a shout. And I think just my advice to you, everyone listening, get it in your calendars. You don't want to have those arguments with your missus. You don't want to have those arguments with your families of why you got to go see Fulham at Wembley. It's when people don't understand football, which is normally family or the other half, it's hard to explain why it's important to go see Fulham at Wembley. So all I'm saying is start planning just in case.
I think that applies to this game too, Skibby, because this game falls on Mother's Day weekend in the UK. So
does it?
If it's on the Sunday, that will be Mother's Day. So look, go see your mum in the morning is what I'd say, and get over to Craven Cottage in the afternoon if that is the case. I do think it will be on the Saturday. We're scheduled to play Arsenal on the Tuesday, so if they can fit our game in on the Saturday, it means that game wouldn't have to move, and the snowball effect of that. So I think it will be the Saturday, but the point's valid.
Well, if it does fall on the Sunday and your mum kicks up a stink, just tell her that Skibby said it's fine. Skibby said it's okay to go to the game, and she's your mum. She'll love you no matter what you do. So, 1 week of silent treatment will be worth it to see Fulham battle against Palace and potentially book a place at Wembley. So there you go. Guys, that has been over an hour, but I think it was a fantastic game to talk about. And, I'm going to let it run over an hour now because we had to talk about extra time and penalties. So call this extra time and penalties. But, we got there. We avenged our disaster class episode at Old Trafford 2 years ago. And, I suddenly feel at peace. I was getting PTSD before the game, but I now feel at peace with what Mitrovic did, what Kavanagh did, what, everything that happened on that day. We've avenged it. We've closed that case and said goodbye to it because we beat Man United at Old Trafford in the FA Cup to send the boys to the quarter-final. It's a fantastic feeling. And all I want to say, Dave, thank you very much for joining and giving your input, really.
No, thanks for hosting, Skibby. And look, I'll be spending the rest of my day watching fan highlights on X. For when the goals have gone in. That's soak it all up and enjoy it. And we'll be back on Thursday night with our After Dark show, which I'm looking forward to. Where we'll be previewing Brighton, and we're actually going to have Mike from the Fulham Boston Sports Club over in America guest featuring. I don't know about you guys. I love seeing, the Fulham fans overseas kind of build their sports clubs. So I want to find out a little bit more about them and how they enjoyed the game at the weekend too. So lots to look forward to, and we're looking forward to that show.
Absolutely. And to touch on that, I think that's a fantastic point. We all go on holiday, right? Wouldn't it be great to meet up with other Fulham fans if you were to visit Boston? I'm sure he'll give us more information on the show, so be sure to tune in. And, if you've got any holidays booked in to go to Boston, I'm sure they'll greet you with open arms. So be sure to tune in for that. And Mark, thank you very much for your input today, man.
Always happy to be here, share some screen time with you guys. Let the world know my rambling thoughts, and up the mighty whites.
Up the mighty whites, indeed. Unfortunately, no Mary Townsend today to give us a good send off. But all I can say now is thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for being so active in the comments. And as always, come on, you whites.